Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Eerie News, and today is January 5th, 2024, Friday, January 5th, 2024. And let's go on to Stranger Than Fiction stories. And this first story is titled Murder Begets Murder. Here we go. And in the span of 6 years, three members of the same family were shot. Two of them died. Now the grave of one of the victims was broken into and the head of the corpse removed. Sabrina Tavares de Almeida, 31, was shot dead in Nova Iguaçu, Brazil in August of 2022. She was buried in Iguaçu Viejo Cemetery, which is also known as the Cemetery of the Slaves. It's located on a dirt road with land and brush bordering the graveyard. On March 17, 2023, her tomb was broken into and the head of the corpse was taken. In place of the head, a clay aguidar used for rituals with burnt objects inside were placed where the head was. There were bottles of drink and papers surrounding it. The cemetery administrator told police he had not seen anyone strange on the grounds in the early hours of March 16th to 17th when it's believed the tomb was breached. To get to the corpse, the concrete lid was broken by blunt force, and then the wooden coffin was also broken. Experts say the violation of the tomb was to use the head for dark rituals. Jorge Luis Gomez de Almeida, 52, Sabrina's father, found out his daughter's tomb was desecrated a month after it happened. He went on April 11 to place flowers on her grave, which is when he found the broken tomb. This is when he was told that a report had been issued to the police. However, they offered no explanation why the family had not been told before then. Jorge said, they said that the tomb had been moved and that I had to wait for a report from the civil police to be ready to know what happened. 40 days later, the document was ready and it was found that they stole my daughter's head and performed a religious ritual. According to Jorge, the civil police had not provided any answers to the family. This story of murder begins earlier when Sabrina's husband, Cristiano da Silva Osorio Ferreira, a military police officer, was murdered on the doorstep of their home. He was talking to a person when he was hit by a shot from a passing vehicle. Cristiano was a retired soldier and worked in the 20th BPM. At his death, his property and pension was given to his widow. However, his brother Mateus da Silva Osorio Ferreira contested the will but lost. He also believed she was responsible for his brother's death. However, the reason for this has not been explained. After this, he threatened Sabrina. In August 2022, a masked intruder wearing gloves entered the home and shot Sabrina while she slept, as well as her mother, Fatima de Acevedo Tavares. Sabrina's mother pretended to be dead but survived the ordeal. Nothing was robbed from the home. At the time, it was reported that two men participated in the crime, but only Matthew was identified. The accomplice would have been the driver of the motorcycle used in the action. According to investigations by the Baxeda Fluminense Homicide Police, the prime suspect was Sabrina's one-time brother-in-law. 4 months after the crime in December 2022, he was arrested for her murder and the shooting of her mother. On July 20th, 2023, Judge Adriano Celestino Santos of the 4th Criminal Court of Nova Iguaçu ordered the release of Mateus da Silva Osorio Ferreira during a hearing of the case. Quote, considering the testimonies given at this time, this magistrate understands that the evidence of authorship in the face of the accused remained fragile. So I understand that he can respond to the process in freedom. The defendant is of good antecedents, having a fixed address and lawful work, not demonstrating risk to public order. This is what the judge wrote. He is set to return to court on August 28, 2023. Even though the authorities believe the theft of the head and the crime were not connected, there are dark rituals where taking a part of the victim continues their punishment in the afterlife. The using of the dead woman could also have been used in witchcraft ceremonies in order to secure the absolution of the main suspect. As of December 2023, there is no mention through any news publication, including those based out of Brazil, what was the outcome of Mateus da Silva Osorio Ferreira's day in court, whether he was found guilty of murdering Sabrina or was released. And I found that really interesting because this story got a lot of attention because obviously it's morbid, and you would think. So I don't know. Uh, there's nothing whether he just wasn't brought, whether it was dismissed for lack of evidence. Who knows? I don't know if her mom saw anything. God knows. But nothing. Let's see. I'm going to keep my eye out for that because, like I said, this story, when it first appeared about what they did to the grave, got a lot of attention. So, all right. Next story is out of Unexplained Mysteries, and it's titled Cursed Painting Strikes Again After a Spate of Mishaps for New Owner. An allegedly cursed painting that was sold in a charity shop back in August of 2023 has since changed hands several times. When this seemingly innocuous portrait of a young girl was purchased from a charity shop in Hastings, East Sussex last summer, the seller assumed that it would be the last they'd ever see of it. To their surprise, however, the painting was returned to the shop the very next day. Before too long, it had sold again, only to be returned a second time and a short time later, with the new owner complaining that she had witnessed shadow figures in her house after bringing it home. Keen to take advantage of the painting's seemingly cursed status, the charity shop owner placed it back in the front window with a haunting message. She's back, sold twice and returned twice. Are you brave enough? The cursed painting soon went viral online, prompting the most recent buyer, James Kislingberry, managing director of the London Bridge Experience, to buy it for over $2,000. For him, the curse began to take effect even before he had picked the painting up, with his car breaking down on the way to the shop. After putting the portrait on display, his exhibition began to suffer all manner of problems, ranging from cameras breaking down to flickering lights and TVs randomly shutting off. In one instance, his father-in-law fell ill and his toaster exploded, while in another, workers claimed to have witnessed a mysterious entity in a black skirt within the vicinity of the painting. We've had a couple of floods on the site between November and December, said Kislingary. We came in one morning and the basement was flooded. We've had small leaks in the past, but nothing on this scale. I know a cynic would say it's just a coincidence, but given the volume of things which keep happening, I do find myself questioning whether there's more to the painting than meets the eye. Well, let me tell you, after paying $2,000 for that painting, maybe I don't know what to say about that. Take it back. Get your money back. Who knows? I wonder how they handle that. I'm returning this painting because it's cursed and I want my money back. Next story is out of Stranger Than Fiction story and is titled Who Murdered Mamie? In June 1932, Mamie Thurman was killed. But who would want to murder the pretty wife of a patrolman? On June 23rd, scandal was in the air. Harry Robertson, the Logan City Commission president, and Clarence Stevenson, his servant, were being held in connection to a murder. And it wasn't just any murder, but that of Mamie Thurman, the wife of Alvin Jack Thurman, who was a political friend and appointee of Robertson's. The Thurmans lived above a private garage at the rear of Robertson's house on Stratton Street. Robertson, a prominent businessman, was married and had two daughters. Murder was not good for business or for a political career, and like all scandals, everybody's dirty laundry got aired. By the way, this is in West Virginia, or Virginia, I'm not sure, I can't remember. Mamie's lifeless body, dressed in a blue cotton dress with white polka dots, was found huddled in a ditch near the top of Trace Mountain. She had been shot twice and her throat was slashed. Garland Davis, a deaf-mute berry picker, found the body about 15 feet from the edge of number 22 Road, which led to the Island Creek Coal Company. The mine was not operating, and for this reason, traffic was not normally found there. Her hat with a bullet hole in it was about 30 feet from the body. One of her shoes was missing, which led police to believe she was killed somewhere else and her body was dumped in the mountain in order to hide it. A knife was also found some distance from the body, with blood on the blade and handle. Her diamond ring and a wristwatch were left on her, so it seemed robbery was not the motive for the crime. Nothing at the place where her body was found suggested a struggle. Her purse with $8 cigarettes and a piece of paper on which was written an automobile license number was found near the body. The police said they would check out the information but never disclosed whose vehicle it belonged to. Mamie had been missing since the day before when she was last seen in a Logan store. That night, her husband had called her at home while he was on patrol and there was no answer. The couple had moved to Logan from Kentucky in 1924. This is West Virginia, I just remembered. Doctors who examined the body determined the gash in her throat caused her death, and the bullets were fired into her head just to make sure she was dead. The cut had severed the jugular vein, and the two bullets entered the head from the left side, passing entirely through the skull. One struck behind the left ear and came out above the right ear, and the second injured above the left and emerged at the top and back of the head. Neither bullet was found, but the police believed it was fired from a .38 caliber pistol. The left ear and cheek were burned by the powder flash. Her neck was broken at the second cervical vertebrae, and she had bruises over the right eye. It was estimated she had been dead about 12 hours before she was found. Robertson admitted, while being questioned by the police, that he had several dates with Mamie Thurman within the last few months. The last time had been the previous Saturday. However, Robertson was not a jealous man, because later he would go on to testify he was aware she was involved with 16 other men. The name of these individuals was never made public, but he said, quote, "One of them is dead. All except 3 live in the city of Logan, and all are married but one." End quote. No one knows for sure if Mamie gave him those names, or if he said he had them as a ploy to ensure he was protected. The message could have been, "If I go down, you all go down too." He was betting no one would call his bluff. Some suspected that perhaps more than one of them served on the grand jury. At one time, Mamie had worked at the Guion Valley Bank with Robertson. It turned out that Mamie Thurman was friends with Robertson's wife, Louise, who eventually became aware of the affair and cut off their friendship with Mamie. There was no question that Mamie didn't know Robertson was a married man. Robertson, known as an avid sportsman, would tell his wife he was going on a fox hunt and instead was meeting Mamie Thurman for a date. His hunting cabin was about a mile from where Mamie's body was found. Stevenson was the go-between for Robertson and Mamie. Normally, he took care of Robertson's dogs, accompanied him on fox hunts, and performed services about the home. He had been in the employ of the Robertsons for 2 years and lived in the attic. Despite their 2-year liaison, Robertson claimed that Tuesday night, when it was believed that Mamie was killed, he was at home and had not seen her. While some in the town of Logan were shocked since Mamie regularly attended Nybert Memorial Methodist Church, others rolled their eyes, since it seemed Mamie's affairs with at least a dozen powerful men in the small town of Logan was a well-known secret. The part they weren't prepared for was to find out that Mamie was intimate with Stevenson as well. It was bad enough that Mamie was an adulteress, but having relations with a black man in 1932 was taboo. At one point, while being questioned, Stevenson said, "Well, if you hung me, you'll hang an innocent man. I didn't do it, and I don't know who did it. If I were guilty, I'd tell you. I realize my position." Stevenson, who was 29 years old, was very short but described as unusually intelligent. There was an absence of the third finger on each hand and a partial loss of the small finger on the right hand. He said the fingers were lost in a mining accident when he lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Before coming to work for Robertson, Stevenson worked at the number 22 mine of the Island Creek Coal Company. On June 26, both men were arraigned before Magistrate L.W. Hatfield. The men said the last time they had seen Mamie Thurman alive, she was leaving the Thurman home about 7:30 p.m. Robertson then instructed Stevenson that he drive by the home of Fanette Jones on High Street to see if she had gone there. This had been one of their meeting places since Jones rented rooms there on a nightly or hourly basis. Stevenson found no one was at the house and it was dark. Then Robertson sent him to watch the entrance to the Holland building, where it was rumored better-known Logan residents, both men and women, met for drinking parties. These gatherings were known as the Key Club, which acted as a speakeasy since these were the years of Prohibition. Stevenson said he watched until 11 p.m. then went home to sleep. Mamie's husband had a solid alibi since he worked the night duty as a patrolman and was seen frequently on the streets until 5:30 a.m. He didn't have a car. Stevenson said that during their last meeting, he had taken the pair to Crooked Creek and left them in the car, and he went to a small shed near the spot where he stayed for about an hour. Then he took them back to town separately. In July, 2 notes of warning were left at the home of Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Emmett F. Skaggs. The first note read, "First warning, do you think you and state police can get by? Close up and tell them to let up. Don't be too late." The second note, with an amateurish skull and crossbones atop it, read, "Skaggs, slow down. Life is good. Don't lose it. Last warning, a friend. Second and last warning." On July 29th, people crammed into the courthouse for Stevenson's preliminary hearing, which was in front of Magistrate Elba Hatfield, son of Anderson Cap Hatfield, and grandson of Devil Anse, whose family participated in the Hatfield-McCoy feud. That same month, Jack Thurman took a leave of absence for a month. He went to visit family in Kentucky. By September, the prosecutor had offered a reward of $1,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the perpetrator. A chemist told the courts that the blood in the auto, Mamie's clothing, and underwear found in Stevenson's room was human blood. James Murphy, attendant at a gasoline station opposite the Robertson home, saw on the day following Mamie's murder Stevenson take the Robertson car out of the garage and drive it over to the riverbank and examine it inside and out 5 times. On September 15th, the headlines read that Robertson was not indicted, but Stevenson was. He testified that Stevenson had access to his car, and when he returned home Tuesday night from a swimming party, it was missing from the garage. Witnesses testified they saw Stevenson driving Robertson's Ford near Trace Mountain in the early hours of June 22nd, when it was believed Mamie Thurman was killed. Several miners testified that when they left the mine about 5 a.m., they saw Stevenson pass them. In October, Clarence Stevenson was convicted of Mamie's murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Over 50 churches in Logan took donations to raise money for his appeal. Mass was held where both black and white attended. However, the appeal was turned down in 1933. Clarence Stevenson was sent to serve his life at Moundsville Prison. 6 years later, he was sent to Huntinsville Prison Farm. He died on April 24, 1942, from stomach cancer and was buried in the Prison Farm Cemetery. Norman Sloan, who spent prison time with Stevenson, said, "He told me he was hired to take the body to 22 Mountain and that he didn't do anything to Mamie Thurman. He never did say who killed her, but he said that he didn't do it. Stevenson told me it was all politics." Mamie had her own sad story. She lost her mother when she was only 1 year old, when she died from complications after giving birth to her brother Theodore in 1901. 4 years before her death, her father, George Morrison, who was an excellent carpenter but also a chronic alcoholic, died of pneumonia after falling into a small stream on Cole Street and then not found until the following day. He was supposedly buried in the Old City Cemetery on High Street, but like his daughter, he was never given a headstone, so his final resting place is unknown. Mamie had siblings who fared better than she did. Her full brother, Theodore, was born and died in Kentucky. Her father married Viola Pugh about 1921, and they had 3 children, Helen, Sarah, and George Morrison, who became a prosecuting attorney in New Mexico. He wrote a book about her murder. Jack Thurman, who was 16 years older than Mamie, did go on to marry again. He returned to Kentucky and wedded Clara Lewis. However, by 1937, she had filed a divorce petition. He died in 1957 at age 72. In the aftermath of the Thurman scandal, none of the former commissioners ran for re-election to public office, including Harry Robertson. The 1933 election were all new members. It is not surprising to learn that Mamie does not like quiet in her grave. Her ghost is seen haunting a section along the roadside on Corridor G and Trace Mountain, mostly seen by truck drivers and others traversing the area late at night. Online bloggers have written the following stories. First one, quote, "But my husband and his sister and several of our friends had a very frightening experience on 22 Mine Road in November of 2008. It was the night after Thanksgiving, and the 5 of us went up there to see if we could find anything spooky. We went to the top of the hill and parked along a dirt road and got out to walk this road. We noticed a large deer torn open in the middle of this lonely road and didn't think much of it at first, but a little later we heard some of the most loudest crashing footsteps that we've ever heard in our lives. These footsteps were coming right at us too. There was no sound of any animal. It was no human that made those crashing sounds. I tore out at a dead run and got back to the van with the rest following me. We jumped into the van and flew out of there before we could see what it was coming around the hill after us. I really think it was a Bigfoot. I have read that people have had encounters with them in Logan. As far as Mamie's ghost, I've heard stories of people who have seen her on the way to work in the early morning hours before dawn. It is said she is in a white dress and glowing as she walks beside the 4-lane highway. We still try to go over there and see if we can see our ghost, but so far, no luck. I wonder if a jealous wife killed Mamie. That would be a different angle. This is a second story. Being a surveyor in my past career, I had come across an area that I wanted to share with my wife. A forest fire tower and a microwave unit on one of the most remote areas in southern West Virginia. In surveying the area, I noticed there were no sounds of the wild. No birds tweeting, no squirrels squawking, or any of the noises one would find in a mountain wild area. I stopped our car at the widened area near the junction of the gated forest fire tower near Road 707, just off the 22 Mine Road near Whitman, Logan County. We got out of the vehicle and immediately my wife told me she felt as though we were being watched. The whole road had a history of being built with the bones of overworked and underpaid laborers whose bones were used as the ballast or underlayment for the concrete highway. This road used to service the mines and 22 Mine Hollow. The men were shot or beaten and left to lay where they died and covered over with the sand, gravel, and concrete that made the road. As I consoled my wife and told her there was nothing to be afraid of, we continued to put on a backpack and began on our journey up the Forest Fire Tower Road. Shortly after passing the gate, I looked up and saw a tall, skinny figure appear out of nowhere, just ahead of us, maybe 100 feet further up the road. I had been sure there was no one there before, as I would have waited until they passed before we left the vehicle in the hands of a stranger. As he got closer, I noticed he had a brimmed hat on, with the hood of a jacket pulled over the top of the hat. He held his head down, as not to expose very much of what looked like an unshaven face. His clothing was that of 1920s, 1930s style, and was dirty and ragged. I spoke to him cordially, but had no response. Head down, he continued his walk down the road. As he passed, I could smell the stench of sweat and body odor. By this time, my wife was frantic to leave. She had really bad evil feelings from just being here, much less a man walking past us, not even making a sound with his footsteps as he passed. Total silence. I know he was real because I felt the air move as he passed me, and the smell of his overworked body floated after him. He turned at the base of the Forest Fire Tower Road and headed toward the US 119 junction. My wife threatened to leave without me, so I walked her back and tried to tell her there was nothing to fear. However, her feelings of unholiness abounding forced me to walk her back to the vehicle. As we got into the car and pulled away down the main 22 Mine Road toward the junction of US 119, I noticed that we didn't pass the fellow we had seen before. So, at the junction of the main highway, I turned and went back up the road where we had just come from, hoping to see this fellow, and maybe find him resting alongside the road, and that I had missed him before. The whole time I was trying to calm my wife, and she's telling me that I was crazy for going back. We went to the end of the mine road, where it emptied into an area where rows of the mining camp houses once stood. I passed no one. The guy totally disappeared. There was nowhere for him to go. The area was totally out in the middle of nowhere, no homes within several miles at that time. I took my wife home, and I have wondered to this day about the encounter we had with a possible ghost, one who had given his life trying to build a road to nowhere. To this day, when I have returned, one can feel the evil that surrounds the whole mountain and road that led to number 22 Mine, Island Creek Coal Company. No noise, no sound of wildlife, only the eerie sound of one's own breath. Still abounds the length of this roadway built by hundreds back many years ago. There you go. Mamie Thurman keeps company of her ghost anyway with Bigfoot and I guess the people that built that road. Okay, next story is out of the Sydney Morning Herald, and it's titled Trawler Skipper's Memory from the Deep Dredges Up Intriguing Questions. Kit Olver felt his trawling net had snagged something large and unwelcome way in the depths long before he had any physical evidence of it. The note of his deep-sea trawler's diesel engine deepened and its exhaust gas temperature rose as it sought the torque to haul against a sudden load. What Olver's net eventually brought to the surface off South Australia's southeast coast that day 9 years ago has bothered him ever since. He hasn't spoken about it for years, now aged 77 with his seagoing years behind him and a couple of heart attacks, reminding him that everything, even the chance to unload old secrets, has an expiry date. He wants to tell his story. It was a bloody great wing of a big jet airliner, he says. He takes a breath as if confronted by the memory. I've questioned myself. I've looked for a way out of this, he says. I wish to Christ I'd never seen the thing. But there it is. It was a jet's wing. Oliver dismisses any suggestion the object was the wing of a small plane. He held a pilot's license when he was a young man and flew several small planes, such as Cessnas. This thing was much bigger than anything in the private plane category, he says. I contact George Curry, the only person still living among the 3 crew members who were on Oliver's 24-meter trawler, the Vivian Jane, on that day in September of October 2014. Curry has spent 42 of his 69 years at sea and was the engineer and first mate on several of Oliver's boats over 2 decades. The 2 men haven't been in contact for several years, but when I phone Curry, he knows exactly what I'm asking about. You've got no idea what the trouble we had when we dragged up that wing, he says. It was incredibly heavy and awkward. It stretched out the net and ripped it. It was too big to get up on the deck. As soon as I saw it, I knew what it was. It was obviously a wing, or a big part of it, from a commercial airplane. It was white and obviously not from a military jet or a little plane. It took us all day to get rid of it. And there's one of the reasons the story has remained beyond knowing ever since. Having spent a day struggling to free the object from the trawler's net, Oliver ordered his free to cut the net free. With evening well advanced, the $20,000 net and whatever it held was cast off and sank into the dark of the Southern Ocean. It came to rest at a relatively shallow depth on the floor of a sea bank, some hundreds of meters beyond the northern tip of a deep underwater volcanic crater. The area is about 55 kilometers west of the South Australian town of Robe and about the same distance from the shore. Oliver has good reason to remember the spot. It was his secret trawling area for a fish species called Alfonsino, an attractive red fish as prized for its aesthetic value in a fishmonger's display as for its firm white flesh. He had discovered the fish, among other species, were plentiful in the depths of the volcanic bowl. The first question that came to the minds of both Oliver and Curry, and they say the other 2 crew members, was whether the wing could have come from Malaysia Airlines flight MH370, which disappeared on March 8, 2014, with 227 passengers and 12 crew members aboard. The disappearance was among the world's greatest mysteries when Oliver and his crew were fishing off South Australia. All these years later, the fate of the MH370 and those aboard remains a ghastly conundrum. Most authorities have since concluded the MH370 came down somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean, but despite the most expensive sea search in history, no trace of the plane's final resting place has been found. In 2015 and 2016, several pieces of flotsam, identified as pieces of the plane, were found washed up on beaches of Reunion, an island off the east coast of Africa, and on the coast of the African nation of Mozambique. All this leaves Oliver worrying that skeptics might classify him as a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hat wearer for talking about a mysterious jet wing many hundreds of kilometers to the east of the area MH370 is presumed to have crashed. Anyone who knows him, however, and that's just about everyone in Australia's southern trawling industry, recognizes him as a hard-nosed, determinedly independent man who has lost and made fortunes on the sea. He does not suffer fools. He was so long in the fishing game, he ran trawlers until he was 75. He has probably forgotten more about the sea than many others will learn. He does not treat the sea or its death lightly, or its stories. No one who has taken a fishing trawler out of Oliver's home port of Portland in southwest Victoria could afford to treat the sea lightly. Along the continental shelf and across Bass Strait and around Tasmania are some of the most treacherous waters and wildest weather systems in the world. Indeed, about 9 p.m. on March 12, 1990, 150 kilometers south of Hobart, Oliver was at the helm of his big Soviet-built trawler, the Aqua Enterprise. He was chasing the huge and lucrative schools of orange roughy when the Southern Ocean almost claimed his life. No one quite knows what happened, though Oliver suspects his vessel hit one of the thousands of shipping containers that go overboard every year, littering the world's oceans and sometimes lurking just below the surface. The Aqua Enterprise started taking on water, and within 90 minutes, the boat was in such peril its three crew members were taken off by another trawler, the Southern Voyager, that battled its way through big seas to the rescue. Oliver wasn't prepared to abandon his trawler, however. He had fitted her with a new engine. It was in deep hock to the bank. Eventually, he had no choice and made the leap to the rescue ship's deck. By 11 o'clock that night, the Aqua Enterprise went to the bottom. When he reached the mobile phone range, he discovered to his great fury that a news reporter had already phoned his wife, Stephanie, to inform her he was missing at sea. It gave him a lasting aversion to journalists, which deepened when, still traumatized, he arrived at Hobart to find himself surrounded by reporters demanding to know how he felt, all of which lends context to his decision now to confide to a journalist his recollection of fishing up what he believes was a jet's wing. Oliver knows precisely where the old secret lies. He traces it for me on the electronic chart plotter of a trawler operated by a friend who still fishes these waters. The chart plotter uses satellite global positioning system coordinates overlaid on a map together with depth and other critical information. Such plotters effectively map the floor of fishing grounds all over Australia's coast and beyond. Oliver points to the spot on the plotter where he says he put down the mysterious wing. It is at 37 degrees, 16 minutes south and 139 degrees, 12 minutes east. He says he tried to alert authorities of his find soon after returning to port, phoning the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. Within hours, he received a return call from an official. The message was that a shipping container had fallen from a Russian ship in the area off Robe. The implication, he says, was that he'd probably fished up a shipping container or part of it. AMSA said this week it had no record of corresponding with Oliver during that period. Unimpressed, he chose not to pursue the matter. 3 years later, he tried again. Oliver wrote an email dated Monday, November 27, 2017, to Ocean Infinity, the company's undertaking a new and ultimately fruitless search for MH370. My name is Christopher Oliver. 3 years ago, I was operating my deep-sea trawler off Robe in South Australia and was fouled for a day trying to recover my net, he wrote. Because of the publicity involving MH370, I reported the incident, and the authorities informed me that a container had been recently lost in the area. Being so far from the search area, no further interest was shown. Unhooking this object and straining every winch, we managed to get most of the net aboard and tow the object away from our fishing drag and cut the net free in 55 fathoms, which is equivalent to about 100 meters. A couple of comments: I have trawled for 35 years, and this was not a shipping container. Having over the years trawled up all sorts of objects, including aircraft, I am convinced this was an aircraft wing. Please feel free to contact me, Christopher Oliver. He said he received no reply, and now, with the grief of the families of those on MH370 playing on his inner voice, Kit Oliver is trying to tell his story from the deep just once more. I think that's a very super interesting story. Because it's like, if it wasn't this MH370, have they lost any other big planes out there? It's like, okay, the shipping container, but you mean prior to this, just out of curiosity, no other ships? I mean, no other planes have gone down close by? And if he's giving them an exact location, how hard could it be to go over there and verify it? Next story, let's go back to Stranger Than Fiction stories, and this is titled The God of Things as They Ought to Be. Florence Pretz, a native of Kansas City, held the design patent for a slant-eyed, pudgy figure granted on October 6, 1908, known as the Billiken. Little did she imagine it would inspire a cult-like following. The Billiken appeared in the Canada West, a magazine of the Sunset Provinces, in 1907. For 8 months, the Billiken appeared in 5 Canada West stories, written by Sarah Hamilton Burchell and illustrated by Florence Pretz. They were both friends who hailed from Kansas City and moved to Chicago. Burchell took her inspiration from the Bliss Carman poem Mr. Moon, A Song of the Little People, published in 1896. The fairy-like being was made into the God of Things as They Ought to Be. A full-page story ad in Chicago brought to the American public the Billiken as the mascot of good luck. Florence Pretz was pictured dressed in a kimono and burning incense to a Billiken statue. She had once been an art teacher at the Manual Training High School in Kansas City. Florence had been drawing Japanese sketches since she was a young girl, which led to the belief her inspiration for the Billiken was Oriental. Pretz told the newspapers she had molded him out of clay and then cast him in plaster. Both her and her friend Sarah Burchell had begun to burn incense before him and worshiping him, and soon good luck came their way. Her friend set up the statue of Billy in her bachelor girl flat after moving to Chicago. She worked as a stenographer but soon had her poems published in a small book titled The Book of the Singing Winds. The naivety that perhaps inspired Florence Pretz with her design of the pudgy fairy worked against her in ways she could never have imagined. The Billiken Company was incorporated with $60,000 worth of capital stock in the state of Illinois on September 24, 1908, by three men, Charles P. Monash, Toby Rubovitz, and James Rosenthal. It seems that real money and the real luck came to them with the sale of the Billiken. The little statue was soon being sold by the hundreds of arts and crafts shops, candy shops, and art shows. The story behind the advertising pitch was that Florence Tinkerbell Pretz came to Chicago to work with her friend in a studio in Highland Park, and both friends would without fail burn incense to Billiken statue every night. However, within a year and a half of the Billiken craze, Pretz made the headlines by casting her little idol off since he no longer brought her luck. She had agreed to sell the rights to the Billiken patent for only $30 per month, never expecting the thousands of dollars it would generate once it was publicized by the Billiken Company. She had become so bitter that she said she would, quote, go out of her way than to see a Billiken throne, a Billiken pin, cut off cuff buttons, or anything else that is based on a Billiken model, end quote. She said she would smash a statue of Billiken if given a chance. Luck did visit her once more on Valentine's Day 1912 when she married Robert A. Smalley and the couple moved to Nebraska. It seemed that in a few short months, a cult of Billiken believers had flourished. It spread beyond the United States to all over the world. In 1909, Billiken was carved by an Inuit carver in ivory, and by the 1960s, the little figure was ubiquitous in major Alaskan cities. In 1911, the Majestic Theater in Illinois ran an ad asking, please return Billiken, bad luck will follow the person that took him. No doubt the theft of the statue was due to the belief that to buy a Billiken was said to give the purchaser luck, but to receive one as a gift would be better luck. The best luck, though, was if you stole it. The custom was to rub the statue's feet or stomach to manifest the good fortune. The Billiken appeared in Japan in 1908 after it debuted in the United States. Images of Billiken was enshrined in different cities in Japan. In Kansai, which is Osaka's geisha community, they were carried as symbols of good luck. In 1912, the wooden statue was displayed at the Usuntenakaku Tower. The Billiken became the unofficial mascot of Osaka. That same year, a shrine to Billiken was opened in Luna Park, a famous amusement park in Osaka. In 1923, the statue mysteriously disappeared and it has never been found. In the Philippines, the Billiken was transformed to the pre-Lenten season carnival god and used in the Manila Carnival. This event coincided with Mardi Gras events celebrated around the world by Catholic countries. The first carnival was commenced in 1908. At least two Billiken-themed songs were recorded, including Billiken Rag and the Billiken Man song. It was rumored that L. Frank Baum, the author of The Wizard of Oz, kept a Billiken in his office. During those years, the Billiken became the official mascot of St. Louis University and St. Louis University High School, both Jesuit institutions located in St. Louis. It remains their mascot present day. The Billiken also became the official mascot of the Royal Order of Jesters, organized in 1911. It is an all-male, by invitation-only Shriner group affiliated with Freemasonry. In 1922, Florence, who now resided in California, debuted a new creation known as the Pot Hound. She worked as an illustrator at Bullock's department store. She intended to put out the Pot Hound as an ashtray with a bone thrown in the pot tray for luck. They were being offered to the public via Bullock's. Unlike the Billiken, the plaster figures never took off. The Billiken as a good luck charm appears multiple times in the Vivian Leigh and Robert Taylor movie Waterloo Bridge. But for all cheery stories of the Billiken, it's inescapable that there would be some with a darker angle. In 1909, the Optimist Club in Salt Lake City used the little image as a genius. Members of the club included presidents, cabinet members, and captains of industry. The in-house Billiken flashed the message, God reigns, the Union still lives, and the sun shines. Even though the clouds obscure it, Go bury thy sorrow, the world has its share, just smile. Many dismissed the Billiken as a fad, but not all. One of them was an Irishman named David McKee. There was no good luck for him because in 1909 he was locked away in the home for the insane in New York. He wanted to write letters of warning to Taft, Roosevelt, and Carnegie. All he would mutter was Billiken, Billiken, Billiken. Years before, while still living in Ireland, Davy McKee met William J. Robinson, who would become head of the Optimist Club in Salt Lake City. Upon arriving in America, McKee attached himself to the organization in Salt Lake City and was sent to the New York office to work there. McKee belonged to the YMCA, taught Sunday school, and was active in church work in Ireland. When he arrived in New York, the Optimist Club was selling the figurine for $1 each, and he saw $200 a day coming in for the sales of the Billiken. Somehow, seeing that the Billiken was indeed only a plaster statue with no magical powers did something to him, as he believed it actually had powers to bring good luck through optimism. What became of Davy McKee is unknown. Florence the Billiken's creator died in 1969 at the age of 83. And see, that's incredible. Here she designs this thing, and she's a young girl, and she signs off her rights for $30. And these three men, they take these $60,000 and they advertise it, and it took off. So you know that they made a lot. And from what I understand, especially in Japan, it's still a very popular figure, the Billiken, the god of things as they ought to be. Yep, there you go. Okay, next story is out of Kent Online, and it's titled "Creepy Clowns with Sharp Teeth Disturb Residents Near Sandwich." I had to, you know what? There was, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago? There was something about this creepy clown thing, and then it went away. And I was like, okay, fat, crazy people. I think this was when they redid the It movie. I don't know, but I guess somebody has nothing better to do. But here we go. Larry teenagers, or I'm sure that's Leary teenagers, wearing creepy clown masks with huge sharp teeth have been disturbing villagers in a series of antisocial acts. Residents say a frightening looking culprit was spotted loitering at the end of the driveway, silently peering at them in ash near Sandwich last night. And similar reports surfaced on Sunday, where one person was seen running outside the co-op shop in a clown disguise described as a red wig and huge sharp teeth. Residents say the clown has also been banging on doors late at night, waking people up. Claire Gilmore, who lives in Ash, says she spotted a masked youngster on Sunday. I was driving back from Wingham on Sunday with my children in the car, and I saw two lads outside co-op, the 41-year-old said. As one of them turned around, he put the clown mask on. He kept running about like he was joking around, but my little girl, who was 3, was petrified, as it is a scary mask. The mom of 4 says the mask covered all of the youngster's face. The teeth were quite scary and looked sharp, she added. My little girl, who is 3, was petrified. My little boy said it looked like a clown from The Curse of Bridge Hollow. It would be quite scary for an elderly person, too. The prankster reportedly returned yesterday evening to cause more disruption in the village. One person wrote on the Facebook group, on the Ash Facebook group, they were hanging around at the end of my drive. I went out to put the bin out, spoke to them, and they just stared. Next door said they had knocked on their door and ran off. One had a clown mask and wig on. I am aware some people out at night are not always just having an evening walk, but others seem less alarmed by the masked individuals, adding, an idiot is walking around banging on doors with a clown mask on. Oh boy. He stood at the bottom of my front garden trying to look scary. Another user said, it is such a shame that in a nice quiet village that sort of thing happens. There seems to be a lot more Larry teenagers around lately. A police spokesman confirmed the force was notified at 11:45 p.m. of 2 young people wearing clown masks in Queens Road, Ash, about 40 minutes earlier. No offenses were reported, and local officers have been made aware. You know what? You know what's really funny is that I really thought that this was over. But you know what? This is a good way of getting beat up. Let me tell you something. Some people don't appreciate that you know that sharp teeth clown thing. The sharp teeth, who cares about a red wig or whatever? But that sharp teeth, that's scary, especially for children. But I'm telling you, if I saw somebody down at the bottom of my driveway with that on, I'd be like, no, that's no, no. Or if I was taking out my trash and I saw, I don't know, that it wouldn't end well. I don't know, one of those things where you punch and run, that kind of deal. Anyway, let's go back to stranger than fiction stories. It's incredible what you do when you're scared. This is titled "When the Earth is the Hungriest." Pachamama Remi is celebrated on August 1st every year. This festival dates to pre-Hispanic times like the Mayan New Year. She is an ancient female deity worshipped by the Mesoamericans and their descendants, even though originally the sun was the main god of the Incas. Pachamama is made from the Quechua word pacha, which means space, and mama for mother. For the Aymara and the Quechua, who have lived in northwestern Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru for hundreds of years, the date signifies the beginning of the month when the earth rests. This is the coldest season of the year in the southern hemisphere. This is when the earth is the hungriest. For this population, their worldview involves duality. Each female thing had to have her male counterpart. For this reason, they sacrificed two animals, male and female. Tributes called charas, I don't know if they're pronouncing it chayas or chalas, but anyway, in the Quechua language, are ritual objects used in the ceremony. The best known is when Mother Earth is fed. A well is made in the earth where it is smoked to drive away evil spirits. Then around noon on August 1st, offerings are left there. These include food, coca leaves, chicha, and alcohol, among other things that are deposited to feed and drink the Pachamama. These offerings are called huacas in Peru, which are often left in caves or dark places. Another tradition is the consumption of meru cane that's macerated in advance of the festival. It's drunk on an empty stomach, which is supposed to strengthen the drinker and drive away evil spirits for the entire year. However, there is a darker side to offerings made to Pachamama. In 2015, the Mars Gaming Expedition discovered a complex in Peru used by the Incas during the 15th century to worship gods in times of natural disasters and drought. The place is about 90 miles from Cusco. They found an necropolis in caves. They unearthed sacrificed children who are called capacochas or capacocha. Due to the repetition of the rituals, a series of ceremonial centers were built throughout the Incan land at high altitudes. The sacrifices were done to curry the favor or appease the anger of Pachamama. Only pure children who were physically beautiful and without defects were chosen. They came from good families who, by giving up one of their children, ascended politically in the Inca Empire. Sometimes older children of lower status were sacrificed as servants. Maria Rosworski, an expert in Inca culture, described the ceremony of Capacocha, child sacrifice, on the occasion of the coronation of Pachacutec as supreme sovereign of the Incas between 1530 and 1540, thus, quote, "At the moment that the 200 children, two by two, male and female, left for the temple, the priest began the prayers to the Inti in order to achieve luck and prosperity for the sovereign. They chose for the purpose the most beautiful children, which had no blemish or deformity, which they adorned on the occasion with luxurious clothes. The chief of the priests, the Vilak Umu, began the first sacrifice by offering it to the Maker, prayed for long life for the Inca for his future victories, and made his prayer by drowning the children, giving them first to eat and drink to those who were old, and to the little ones their mothers, saying that they should not arrive hungry or discontented to where the Maker was. The same ceremony was repeated to the idol of the sun, to the thunder, to the Huaca, or Huanacauri, and to Pachamama, with the invocation of, O Mother Earth, to your son the Inca, have him above you, still and peaceful. The children were drowned and buried along with numerous gold and silver crockery and precious shells." End quote. For much of the 20th century, many specialists and activists denied the existence of human sacrifices in Inca culture. With the first discovery of mummies in 1905, it was argued that it was a sporadic practice. An expedition was mounted and the mummified body of a 5-year-old child along with funerary objects were brought down. After the arrival of the Spanish, several Catholic priests described this practice, but until its discovery there was no proof. The consensus among archaeologists was that it was an exaggeration or propaganda of the priests to discredit the Inca cults when they described how profuse this practice was. Then between 1920 to 1922, Felipe Calpanche, a llama shepherd, discovered a tomb on Cerro Chucha at almost 17,000 feet in altitude. Along with Juan Fernandez Salas, a Chilean miner, they dynamited the tomb and brought out the mummified body along with the grave goods inside. The inhabitants of Tolombon called it Queen of the Mountain. While it was there, they lit candles and gave it offerings. In 1922, Pedro Mendoza, a collector and dealer, bought the mummy and took it to Cafayate. He exhibited it in one of the oldest houses in the town known as La Casa de Mendoza, where he charged visitors to see it. 2 years later, he sold it to Perfecto Bustamante, a herbalist from Buenos Aires, who displayed it at his shop. In 1924, Professor Amadeo Rodolfo Ciroli became aware of the mummy's existence. He took photographs, an inventory of the grave goods that accompanied her, and a detailed description of what she wore. However, Ciroli never disclosed this information until 1954. By 1935, Bustamante had died, and his widow gave the mummy to Asbjorn Peterson, an amateur archaeologist, in exchange for a gas installation. He kept it in his attic for 50 years, forgotten and untended. Then in 1977, Ciroli published a paper titled La Momia de los Quilmes, The Mummy of the Quilmes, where he provides all the information he gathered when he inspected the relic, along with the photographs taken in 1924. After this publication, the lost mummy became the object of a search. In 1979, the only photograph of the mummy was shown on a TV program with hopes its whereabouts could be determined. An antique dealer in San Telmo bought it for $48 in 1985. The dealer offered archaeological objects which included the mummy, and it came into the hands of Carlos Colombano. In 1991, Marcelo Scanu, an explorer, saw it exhibited in front of a bank in Buenos Aires on Florida Street. In 2001, the Center for Studies for Applied Policies acquired the mummy with its grave goods and initiated the first scientific studies of the young girl's sacrifice hundreds of years before. DNA examination of the girl estimated she was about 8.5 years old. She had no intentional cranial deformations, and a year before she died, she was eating a normal meal, until 6 months before her death, where she was mostly consuming corn. Her cause of death was a stab through the back, which caused a traumatic hemorrhage, which explained the expression of pain on her face. Examination of her finely braided hair found she had once eaten coca leaves, as is normally found in ritual victims. It was then that the 15th century stories told by the Europeans seemed to be accurate. In 1964, members of the Club Andino Mercedario discovered a ceremonial mound on the summit of Cerro del Toro that is over 20,000 feet at its highest point. It is located on the Argentine-Chilean border. A whitish object they saw protruding turned out to be the upper part of a human skull. They found the mummy of a young man with his teeth, skin, and musculature in perfect condition. Its eyes, with a slight Mongolian fold and protruding cheekbones, are typical for the Inca people. He was wearing a shirt and loincloth, along with a blanket, double-soled flip-flops, a hat, and small utensils. He was estimated to have been 18 to 20 years old when he died. Cupped in his hands, he had a small mouse that had been decapitated. In 1974, close to the top of Cuellar volcano, a discovery was made of a child mummy. Due to the hard and frozen ground, it could not be brought down. It wasn't recovered until 1999. That same year, 3 frozen children with a rich trousseau in perfect condition were found. They became known as the children of Huillaco. They had been killed about 500 years before, and due to the richness of their grave goods, they were thought to be Inca nobility. DNA found there was no relationship between them. The discoveries of the Mars Gaming Expedition confirmed the importance of human sacrifices in the ancient cult of Pachamama. Starting in 2011, archaeologists discovered what turned out to be the largest single mass child sacrifice event in human history on a cliff above the Pacific Ocean, once inhabited by the Chimu. The sacrifice was carried out about 550 years ago, and the remains of 140 children and 200 young llamas were unearthed. John Verano with Tulane University, who was part of the research team, said they had found evidence of the greatest mass sacrifice of children in America and probably in world history. Personally, I did not expect it, and I think no one else could have imagined it. The excavations ended in 2016. The temple dated back 3,500 years. Radiocarbon tests date the grave goods back to between 1400 to 1450 AD. The skeletal remains of the children and animals show evidence of cuts to the sternum, as well as dislocation of the ribs, suggesting that the victim's chests were open and separated, perhaps to facilitate the removal of the heart. It is theorized that children had been sacrificed to appease the El Nino phenomena and showed signs of being killed during wet weather. As Alfonso Caso wrote in the book El Pueblo del Sol, which translates to the village of the sun, man has been created by the sacrifice of the gods and must reciprocate by offering them his own blood. Further north into Central America and Mexico, chroniclers who accompanied the Spanish describe where in 1487 more than 80,000 victims were sacrificed to inaugurate an extension of the Templo Mayor. This was not only the Franciscan and Dominican friars who described this event, but other accounts written in the Nahuatl language corroborate it. Archaeologists and anthropologists, through examination of human remains, have found that human sacrifice was widespread throughout Mesoamerica from pre-classic times to the arrival of the Spanish. The discovery of the Great Wall of Skulls, or Zampantali, excavated in Guatemala Street in the center of Mexico City in 2018, found walls of skulls taken from sacrificial victims. A Mexican culture opposed to the Incan, the sacrificed children have been found to have suffered from acute health problems based on an examination of their teeth and in their nutritional status. For this culture, sacrificial victims were either war captives or those from within their own community. They were chosen according to the deity they would be sacrificed to. They believed the blood of the victim not only fed the gods but regenerated them as well. The most common method consisted of removing the heart of the victim. This was done through different techniques. Sometimes before the extraction of the heart, the victim was arrowed, burned, or locked in caves to obey the symbolic motif of each deity. Sacrifices to the Mexica god Chicomecortle who presided over vegetation required a young woman who represented the goddess to be decapitated. The decapitated head was compared to the severed ear of corn. In war, it was not only conquest that was sought, but a source for sacrificial captives. On the battlefield, efforts were made not to kill an opponent, but to capture them alive. Some texts in Nahuatl, the Nahua collaborators of Fray Bernardino de San Juan, describe that some had to be dragged to climb to where they would be sacrificed, others fainted, and some more cried with sadness. However, in celebrations where they had to represent an important god, such as Tezcatlipoca, some warriors who were offered freedom rejected it because of the honor that that celebration implied. Let me tell you, I don't care. You know what? That's horrible. That's really horrible. I mean, you hear of the bog people in England and Britain and all this sacrifice. That's horrible. And children. It's like, yeah. Okay. So there you go. That's what we've got for today. And I will be back soon with some more weird and unusual information news. And again, I want to wish you a very, very happy new year. Till next time.